Okay, welcome everyone. It's the top of the hour and we are starting the EITC EQ Hangout. We used to call it the EITC EQ webinar and now we call it the EITC EQ Hangout because we're using Google Hangout. So we're trying to stay up with the latest technology and hopefully we've got all of the bugs worked out and we can have a seamless program for you this morning, and with little technical issues and glitches which we've had in the past interfering with our broadcast today. So, as you may know, today's program is about work-life balance and the connection between emotional intelligence and work-life balance. And um, uh, for those of you who don't know, EITC is the Emotional Intelligence Training Company, and we provide assessments, we provide training, and we provide coaching to organizations that want to improve their leadership performance. And so mostly our work is with leaders within organizations, and as we like to say, we try to help managers because anyone can be a manager who knows their job, who knows the work, and help those managers to become leaders where they impact positively on the people around them and be more accountable and more responsible for the performance of their themselves, their divisions, departments, teams, etc. So just before we begin, let you know that the EQI, the Emotional Quotient Inventory, is a critical tool in our business for helping people to have a better understanding of the kinds of skills that they might want to draw upon in order to achieve a more optimal work-life balance. And I'm joined by my colleague Kim Cairns this morning, and it's what's unique about this and which is kind of fun is that Kim and I live in different cities, which would be about a 13-hour drive to see each other, and so Kim is here in Calgary, Alberta, where we're broadcasting from this morning, because we're taking off on a very exciting project trip this afternoon to Africa. And as I promised, we're going to tell you more about that in future broadcasts. This will be our second trip to work on a very exciting contract, which we hope to tell you all about. We have a confidentiality agreement that we've signed with this particular government, and we want to make sure that we don't talk about anything that they don't want us to talk about. So this will be a trip to make sure that we conform to the confidentiality agreement. So Kim is one of our senior EQ coaches at the Emotional Intelligence Training Company. And so Kim does a lot of the one-to-one work with leaders in organizations along with other members of our team. So my favorite thing is the structuring and the design and the delivery of the group sessions, and Kim's really good at and really likes the one-to-one work. So just before we launch into this discussion of work-life balance and emotional intelligence, I'm going to just turn it over to Kim to talk a little bit about this concept of work-life balance, because when you think about a balance, you think about two things being in fairly equal balance, but I don't think that's what we're talking about, is it, Kim?
Well, no, Dave, and I think it's interesting because I think we hear so much about work-life balance now, and the impression that a lot of people can get is there is some magical place that I can get to where I have balance. And in reality, we all are works in progress. And it's a constant assessing of how things are going for us and what tweaking and adjustments we want to make in that journey. So I think this morning what we're going to do is just run through the 15 competencies in the EQI model. And for those of you who aren't as familiar with the model, know that we have a lot of resources on our website. You can access all of that material and do some further reading. So what we're going to start off with today is self-regard. And I think that it's an interesting facet when we're working with people, either in groups or one-on-one, that Um, self-regard is that territory where, due to culture, uh, due to environment as we're growing up, a lot of us have been faced with don't think too highly of yourself. And I think that there may be some sound reasons for that, but I think what it also can do is it can tend to impede a person's actual recognition, acknowledgement of what their strengths and capacities are. So for instance, with self-regard, often what I'll have folks do is at the end of their day reflection, or if they begin their review of the day the next morning, is rather than starting off with what went wrong today and what do I need to fix, to take the first part of that reflection as what went well today and what did I bring to that situation or that conversation to help make that happen. And to clearly identify what those skills and capacities are internally that I'm bringing to those situations. So, and I've found that people find that very helpful over a period of time. They do that for a couple of weeks and jot down some bullet points. They start to get a lot more comfortable with their strengths, and not in an overblown kind of way, but just a solid recognition, acknowledgement, and celebration of those skills.
That's right, Kim. And when we're talking about self-regard in relation to work-life balance, what we're really talking about is we're talking about having the confidence to that sense of self and that feeling that I'm really worth figuring this out so that I can have a more optimal work-life balance. And again, it's not about that work and life are in balance with each other. That is, they have an equal weight. It's about finding that optimal balance for you, whatever that might be this, or it might be this, but it's about finding that optimal balance for you. And in order to create that, we've got to have that sense of self-worth, that we respect ourselves enough to actually make it happen. And so we find that when people struggle with self-regard, that is, they're kind of focused on some of the ways that some of the parts of themselves that they don't really accept or have trouble accepting, and maybe feel less deserving or less worthy, then they're less likely to work towards that optimal work-life balance. And another one in the self-perception composite area of our model that we use, which is the model that the EQI is based on, the emotional quotient inventory, the online assessment that we use in our work, is self-actualization. And self-actualization is about being able to be involved in what has meaning and a sense of purpose and fulfillment for us, an area where we feel we can really work to our full potential. And again, if we're not involved in that, in terms of the work part of the work-life balance, then we really feel out of balance. If work is a place we have to go to every day, and it's a real slog, and it's difficult and it's unenjoyable, then we're going to feel really out of balance there with respect to that work-life balance. But if work is meaningful and fulfilling, and we're really doing what we feel like we were meant to do, what we're put on this earth to do, then we have that wonderful feeling of fullness that comes with work. Another piece of our self-perception piece, and I'm going to turn it back to you here, Kim, to talk about the manager, that person who is fairly senior in their job, and again they really know the work well. They do that part really well, but they're not very emotionally self-aware. This is another piece of self-perception which is revealed to us through EQI scores. And when people score a little bit lower in emotional self-awareness, what's that like, and how does that interfere in their striking an optimal work-life balance?
Well, Dave, I think one of the really fabulous parts of this EQI model is actually giving people the vocabulary to talk about how they're functioning.
Yes.
I think one of the problems that has arisen with regard to emotional content in our lives is people not actually having the words to express what's going on.
Right.
So I think that's, one of the key things with regard to emotional self-awareness is developing that vocabulary. I feel often what I'm going to feel is some physiological signs that I'm being emotionally impacted by something.
Yes.
My jaw is going to tighten up. I can maybe feel my pulse going up. Maybe my palms are sweating a bit. And I think that what tends to happen is people can't actually put words to why that's happening initially. So often in our work with people, we're getting them to take a look at what's coming up for you emotionally in that situation. Mm-hmm. What's causing that physiological response to take place? Given that you then start to recognize what those emotions are, that's the starting point for being able to recognize that I'm in charge of those emotions too. I'm not just driven by them.
Yeah.
I recognize and acknowledge that they're there, and then I make some choices about how I'm going to deal with that emotional impact.
And part of that choosing to deal with it is expressing those emotions, which is another one of our 15 EQ competencies. So we've got, on the one hand, we've got emotional self-awareness. We find that some people are just really disconnected from their own emotions. It's very difficult for them to know what it is that's going on with them. That is connecting various events in their lives or various situations with their feelings. And then the other part to that is the expression of that, is to say, you know what, I don't like this job anymore. To have the realization and then to express it. You know what, I'm gonna change this. I'm gonna move in that direction. Interestingly, there's a connection with assertiveness, and we were just talking about this morning, that once we express that, I don't like this anymore, I need to make a change, then talk about that assertiveness piece that we were talking about this morning.
Well, I think it's so important to incorporate these skills and competencies into how we're operating daily. So it's that sense of, I need to get assertive with myself. Okay, given, Kim, that you're unhappy in this situation, that emotionally it's not very fulfilling, it's time to be able to articulate what the reasons are behind that, now that I've started to develop the vocabulary of that. And to recognize, too, I think there's a roadblock because people have been told, present as fully formed, fully functioning all the time. That's been the credo of our work world, and often in our personal lives too. And so I think when people start talking about emotional expression, they think that's laying my heart out on the table, and actually it's not. It's just clearly articulating and assertively articulating what's going on emotionally for me. And combined with that is then given that, and here's what I'm going to do with regard to that. That's the key part.
Yes.
So not just getting stuck in how I'm feeling about it, but recognizing that, okay, I am feeling this way, and here are my thoughts around and what I'm going to do to given that that's going on in my life.
Absolutely. And all of this, being able to be assertive both with ourselves and say, you know what, and we talked about the idea of the saboteur. The saboteur, if you're not familiar with the concept, comes from the Coaches Training Institute, and they talk about this little voice in our heads that kind of goes against us and kind of it tells us that we're not good enough, we're not worthy enough. In fact, just stay with that job no matter how much you dislike it. You just stay there because you probably don't deserve anything better. And to get assertive with that voice and say, get out of here. I'm taking charge. I'm gonna make this change because it's in my best interests. To do that also requires the third competency in our the self-expression composite. I lost that for a moment. Yeah, the third competency in our self-expression composite area is independence. And so if you're dependent on others, you are less likely to take steps to improve your own work-life balance. And so we have to independently determine what's best for us. And they, they're. Go ahead, Kim.
Well, I'm just thinking, Dave, that it's really about that recognition that I'm actually in charge. I'm not an extra in the movie.
Yes.
I'm actually the director.
Yes.
So it's about being able to take charge of what I'm wanting to do with this developing self-awareness and vocabulary to then head in the directions that are congruent with my values and do provide me with fulfillment.
Absolutely. And now the next competency in our list is interpersonal relationships. And we were so excited that our next broadcast was going to fall on Valentine's Day. This was before we had to, quite quickly and hastily book a trip to Africa. Because relationships are so critical to our work-life balance, that if we don't have great relationships with people at work, then we're going to really experience a deficit in that area. And if we don't have great relationships outside of work, that is in our personal lives, with our significant others, with our family, with our children, with our community, then we're going to experience a deficit there. So relationships are the stuff of life. And it's kind of what this is all about, that this life is not about going through life just taking care of ourselves and being independent beings. That's not what it's about. It's about being independent and developing our personal skills so we can be interpersonal. And so the relation, if we, someone's scoring low in interpersonal relationships, and they're talking about the fact they feel like their work and life are out of balance, we're going to want to talk about the various relationships at work, in their personal life. Let's look at their relationship skills to some extent. Are you able to have a conversation? Are you able to deal with conflict? And then we can go to that level and talk about those skills as well. Kim?
Well, and I think that segues nicely, Dave, into the next competency, which is empathy. So in order to really, interact with someone in a meaningful way, it's really important that I get an understanding of where that person's coming from, what's going on for them. So I'll often talk with people about just get curious. If they don't have a real sense about what empathy, well, I don't know, I don't really understand why that person's feeling that way, then that's an ideal time to get curious, to ask questions about why that person's arrived at the perspective they've arrived at. And for leaders in business and for parents in families, information's important. And we make better decisions when we're getting that information. So equate empathy with curiosity.
Yes.
And mindful curiosity. I'm not just trying to dream up my answer to whatever Dave is saying. I'm really hearing what he's saying, processing that, and getting a better understanding of how we could arrive at that place.
And what interferes with curiosity is judgment. And we are so judgmental about everything. So rather than being curious about why you might be feeling or have the perspective or position that you have, I'm going to be judging that. And I'm not going to be curious anymore. I'm going to be wanting you to change your mind and see things from my point of view. And if we couple that empathy, that curiosity that Kim was talking about, with social responsibility, that is the responsibility to make things better, the responsibility to contribute and give back and see how you can benefit from what I have to offer you, then that's coming from a place of unconditional positive regard. And if we can just change how we view our fellow travelers on the journey on this planet, then just imagine how much better things could be if we come at it from a place of curiosity and empathy and really, trying to figure out and what it's like to be in that person's shoes and what's it like from their perspective. and then coming from a place of generosity and a place of abundance where we're willing to give whatever it is that is needed, has the potential to boost the way we again that we experience work and that we experience this. I don't really like the whole phrase work-life balance, because for us, we're trying to help people to see that we spend so much time in our lives at work. Let's make that life. So I want to see not this idea that there is work and then there is life, but that there is this integration of work and life. And I want for everyone to enjoy their work and have as much fun as you and I do when we're working. We're helping people to sort out their problems, and to be fair, we found our passions. And there was a long time when I was much younger, when I didn't know what it was, where my passion was, and what my passion was all about. And so that is true for a lot of people. It's about finding it. It's about seeking it. It's about it being with intention, finding those areas of work which you can be so excited and enthusiastic about that it doesn't feel like work. And that's what we want for everyone. And that's the way that I think it can be, with some creativity and with other minds involved. And that's why we believe so firmly in coaching, and why coaching is such a powerful tool to help people to have a better work-life balance. Is that we're able to come in as that objective third party and just really ask some frankly what might sound like dumb questions, and help people to get a better perspective on that. And you and I both, Kim, have talked with people, with managers who are looking for a better, more optimal work-life balance, whatever that may be for them. And once that's done, they become better leaders. And so for us in our work, we don't really differentiate between being a better human being and being a better leader, and so we think that this is about that. Kim, do you want to comment on this this whole idea of again, work-life balance, work-life integration, whatever we want to call it?
Well, I mean, for me, sometimes what I get is this picture of you'll often see babies, young toddlers eating off compartmentalized plates, and some of us continue that compartmentalized plate approach.
What about the frozen TV dinner?
Yeah, exactly. So you have your dividers, and I think in essence, it's just as Dave talked about, it is our life. All parts of it are our life, and there will be a certain degree of compartmentalization depending on what we're doing for work and what's happening in our personal lives. But the more we can start to erode those little walls in our plate and blend it together and realize that it's a full palette and it'll get mixed a bit, I think there's fulfillment in that.
Absolutely. Absolutely there is. So the next composite area in our model is the whole area of decision making. And decision making consists of first and foremost problem solving. So some people think, well, problem solving, isn't that a more cognitive aspect of the brain's functioning? Like, how can that be part of emotional intelligence? And really, what we're talking about is we're talking about the integration again of what is a relatively cognitive process and emotions. And those two parts of our brain always work together. And so what we're saying is, let's acknowledge that, let's see what emotions are there, and let's use that in the process of problem solving. And so, of course, with work-life balance, that seems to be a no-brainer for us in terms of looking at how we're going to problem solve around, again, striving toward a more optimal work-life balance. Kim, you want to talk about that a
Well,
bit?
well, I think the problem solving often what I find is, and it's been a problem in my life at times too, is being faced with a problem at work and feeling like, okay, I need to solve this. I need to come up with the solution, and I feel pressure around that. And often what I'm finding with people is if they can just start to open up a bit and share that problem. And here's where we're talking a bit about that transformational leadership approach that we really promote.
Yeah.
It's engaging others in the solving of those problems and not having to carry that full weight on my own shoulders. And I think for me, the kickstart to that is thinking back to who were those important leaders in my life and why were they important? And often what my own response to myself is, well, they allowed me to make decisions that counted. They gave me responsibility. They engaged me in the process. And through that, I stumbled, barked my knuckles, skinned my knees, and through that learning, came to a better place and a better understanding of what my capacities were and what my contributions could be. So it's about recognizing those emotions of that pressure to solve. Let's engage more people in that process. That will be for the benefit of the team or the company or the family if we're talking about what's going on in our personal lives.
Absolutely, and it is one of the central issues in our work. As you well know, we are evolving from what I call old school style of leadership, which is authoritative, it's autocratic, it is command and control, and we're moving to a collaborative, participative style of leadership. Not just style of leadership, but world. In fact, our evolution as a species is moving towards more collaboration, more connection, more communication, deeper relationships. And so one of the things that we constantly battle is old school thinking around leadership versus new school thinking around leadership. And new school thinking around leadership is involve everyone. The more you involve them from the beginning, the more buy-in you'll have, pardon the air quotes, but buy-in is an overused word, but it's so important to get buy-in. We need people to be bought in, and so it's about not having to do it yourself. You don't have to do this alone. And part of that, one of our next competency is reality testing, and people have a very unrealistic view of their situation. People feel like, and there's an exercise we do in one of our leadership workshops, which is about having people list all of the things they have to do in the day. They have to get up at a certain time, they have to make lunches for the kids, they have to do this, they have to do that. And then we have people go through and cross out the word have and write in the word choose. Because the reality is we choose those things. Nobody is holding a gun to our head and forcing us to do the things we do. So when we write in the word choose, that's the reality. That allows us to really look at what we do and why we do it, and allows for a tremendous amount of choice. That now we've got choice over how we structure our life. That's the reality. Is that we often feel like, and you've heard this and I've heard this from the managers that we coach, and that is, I don't have a choice. This is my life. This is what I'm stuck with. And maybe to some extent there are some aspects of one's life which are that way. For the most part, most of it is a choice. And so we choose to do that. And the third in our decision-making composite is reality testing. Impulse control. Thank you. And with respect to impulse control, it's about controlling the impulse to make snap decisions about our work-life balance. Have you ever seen those end well, Kim? When people make those kind of...
Well, they can work well in certain situations where something really big's going on and I do need to make a snap decision. I still need to have that capacity. But I think with regard to impulse control, there's a real opportunity, and again, it's around choice. a situation comes up, and in my mind, I can be thinking, okay, do I go with my default response in this situation? Or is this an opportunity to maybe try something else? So it's about controlling that impulse to just go with my default, where I get into the same pattern, no matter what's happening, I'm giving the same responses, and actually just saying to myself, okay, I'm just going to step on that impulse control a bit right now and come at it from this perspective over here, and just see where that goes. It's an opportunity to assess whether that's going to work for me and whoever I'm engaged with or not, and know that I've exerted some impulse control to not just go with my standard pattern-making responses.
Absolutely. Yes. The last composite area that we want to talk about, and then we're so happy to take questions. You'll see, hopefully you'll see a place where you can type in your questions, and please feel free to do so. We're very happy to take those. We'll take those questions by email. We'll take those questions by text. We'll take those questions right in the chat there that you see. The last composite area that we want to talk about is stress management. You know, I don't know of many other reasons. I suppose you know, some are the lack of fulfillment. But you know, one of the biggest areas that we deal with respect to work-life balance is stress. Why is that? Well, the reason is that in terms of, again, that work-life balance, people are feeling like that work is the one that is really weighing them down, intruding in their lives, creating all kinds of stress for them, and then trying to do both well. It's trying to do work well and trying to do home well. So be that parent, be that son or daughter, or you know, whatever the case may be, to try to do both of those well is stressful. And that's where the stress management competencies come into play, and we want to talk about those now. The first of which is flexibility. So, Kim, how do we leverage this competency of flexibility to help with doing those both parts of our lives well?
Well, again, I think it's about with regard to flexibility, it's about taking that control component out of it. You know, Dave was talking about the reality testing component and saying, I must do this every day. And one of the things that popped up as you were describing that was, even with regard to I need to make the lunches tomorrow. And so, you know, from a parenting perspective, I've always viewed parenting as a gradual release program. We start off being absolutely responsible for them when they're tiny. And then we reach a point where what's happening then is we're gradually releasing them into the world. So with regard to making lunches, which can be a really stressful thing for people, it's a great opportunity to be flexible enough to sit down with my daughter and say, you know, I continue to make your lunch. Would you like to maybe make your own lunches now? And engage her in that conversation and be flexible enough to go with what her choices are going to be around lunch. Again, within some parameters, but where we run into trouble with flexibility is not being able to make a decision at all, just being tossed around by my emotions.
Yes.
Thinking I have a plan, then having some other feeling intrude in my body and flip to another choice. So, you know, there's both ends of the spectrum, trying to have too much control and maybe not having enough. So again, it's finding that balance within each one of these competencies too.
And we haven't talked very much about it yet today, but you know, one of the kind of underlying assumptions with respect to any kind of assessment tool is that more is better. And with respect to the EQI, more is not always better, and we have to consider the potential downside of a higher score. And this is one of those areas that, and of course it's true for every one of the 15 competencies. With respect to flexibility, you can be too flexible. And sometimes, and particularly in the area that we address most of the time, that is leadership, you need to say, this is the way it's going to go at times, and take a firmer stand. And again, not hearkening back to command and control leadership, but just being that person who says, this is the way that it's going to go, and here's why. And to be a little bit less flexible. And so with respect to work-life balance, again, absolutely. So, be a little bit flexible. Don't take such a firm stand that it's your firm stand that causes stress for you. So it's about being flexible there. Another one of our competencies here is stress tolerance. And stress tolerance is about being able to take the stress that's there better. So we have to have those strategies, those techniques, those tactics that help us to deal with the stress that we experience better. It's not about reducing stress or eliminating stress. It's about acknowledging the fact that life is stressful. And again, that trying to get that work-life balance is stressful. What are we going to do to make sure that we deal with that better? I clearly remember the story of, if you got a story, Kim, I'll let you share that one. But clearly remember the story of the guy who loved to play golf, and golf was a huge part of his life, and he just couldn't wait to get out on the golf course. It was so stress relieving for him. I look forward to seeing the guys and all this. And so I said, okay, so when was the last time you played golf? And he said, 2 years ago. I was like, for him, it was like, wow, I can't believe that I haven't played golf in 2 years. And so, of course, number one on the agenda, figure out how to sort of move things around in the schedule to make what is a really critical stress tolerance tactic for him, how to get that back into his life. And it's funny because those things slip away. Those are the first to go when our loads become really heavy in work or in life. Again, I have trouble with that, but in any case, when the load gets too difficult, then those things that really are the nice to haves, the things that we feel like are the add-ons, the luxury things, kind of slip away. And I know for myself, some of those things, right? I don't get out downhill skiing as much as I'd like to, and that's a huge way of dealing with stress for me. Go ahead, Pete.
Well, and I think, David, often when I'm talking with folks, time in our culture it is the great barrier in most people's minds. And it is a reality. We lead busy lives. But I think what is really beneficial with regard to stress is figuring out some strategies on a daily basis to be able to deal with that stress. I may love golfing, I may love skiing, I may love paddling, but there are only certain times when I can do that. Maybe I do have to wait till the weekend, or I have to wait for my holidays to do that. But it's really important for me to develop some strategies on a daily basis where I can take 15 minutes when I feel that stress building in me and have some strategy to be able to deal with that. So often encouraging people to, whether that's a walk around the block, or that's 10 minutes of deep breathing, there are solutions and strategies for people if they start to do a bit of exploring around what's going to bring that stress level back down so I can go and face that problem that's causing me stress again. Absolutely. But it's that continuous daily flow of stress management.
Absolutely. And our final competency is optimism. And of course, the way we choose to view something, it determines how stressed we're going to be by it. And this is true for looking at work-life balance. If we can look at it as a real opportunity, as full of choice, and negotiation and compromise and working things out with our significant others or our family or our team at work or our boss, then that's going to lower the stress that we experience around it, and also allow us to come to a more optimal work-life balance. Again, is that all of these 15 competencies, and you can see that together they work a little bit like instruments in an orchestra, and they have to work together well. So optimism is one piece, being able to see it, and being assertive with ourselves, with others, to say, hey, I don't like this balance. I want a different balance, one that suits me better. But to be able to see that this is possible is one place that we start, and that begins with hope.
Yeah, definitely, Dave. And I think I'll often say to people, optimism from an emotional intelligence perspective is not the school of silly hope, where I walk around with a smile on my face, hoping things are going to get better. Optimism is really built on facing challenges and daunting circumstances in our lives, which we all do and will, and recognizing that skills have been developed through that process, and those skills are transferable to other daunting experiences. So that's where optimism really stems from. And so it's that recognition that, oh, I've been through difficult times before, and this situation is not exactly the same as that, but I learned a few things about how to work my way through that last one, and I think some of those things can definitely apply to this new challenge that I'm facing.
Absolutely. Yeah, so those are the 15 competencies, and our brief kind of look at how they relate with striking a better work-life balance, and how we work with clients is not that different from what we just did. We go through those areas where people have a higher score, talk about whether there's any potential downsides. Again, if people are overly assertive without, again, a nice balance of empathy, then that could be problematic. And so we want to talk about, speaking of balance, we want to talk about a better EQ balance, a balance of emotional intelligence skills and competencies in order to be more effective in, again, connecting with others, creating deeper relationships, etc. So it's about using these competencies to address what is, for many of us, fairly personal, which affects others. So our partners are affected by our attempt and our striving for a better work-life balance for us personally. So this is why it's so critical to involve those who are closest to us, those people who are affected by our choices. We need to have these kinds of conversations with them and let people know that we're dissatisfied about this piece or about this piece. We need to have that open dialogue and communication. And I know that this is a big part of our coaching is, again, encouraging dialogue. And why do you think people have such trouble talking about the things that are most important to them, Kim?
Well, I think, Dave, that again, it does come down to choice to a certain degree. I just wish I had the time to think about this more, to talk about this more. As a vague kind of thought back here, but it doesn't end up getting operationalized because I have a busy life. I have a lot of things going on. I just don't have the time. And I think that we all could benefit from that coaching relationship. From the point of view of just creating that space and time to be able to have those conversations. And I think that it's if somebody's engaged in a coaching relationship with me, often we're working on some kind of behavioral change. I'll suggest to them, okay, let's incorporate your spouse or a very good friend or your teenage son. And how about just saying, I really feel like I need to work on my emotional expression, so I'm going to be trying some different things over this next couple of weeks. And I'd really appreciate your feedback about how that's landing. So there we've taken somebody to a situation where they're creating those moments in their own life,
right?
Having those real kind of conversations as they develop that skill.
Yes. Again, this is why I don't like the term work-life balance, is that that life is all inclusive, that we don't go to work and stop living. And this is why this term is kind of ridiculous. It's that, and of course, we all know where it comes from. It comes from people whose work becomes consuming and kind of interferes maybe with other aspects of their life. But as you can see, work is life. And when we go to work, we're trying to encourage, and again, this is part of new school thinking versus old school thinking, is that we want managers to be who they really are, to find their authentic self and be that person. That's the person that I'm attracted to, that I want to spend time with, that I want to work with, that inspires me, is the authentic person who's not trying to be someone they're not trying to be the cool, cold, old school leader. We want to get rid of that person. We don't like that person. We don't want to work for that person any longer. We want to work for the person who is human, who struggles with work-life balance just like we do. And so it's about bringing that person to work. And again, having that more integrated work in life, so that we're not vastly different people at work than we are at home. That we bring ourselves and our fully formed. Well, again, we have to be careful of that term, fully formed, because it's a journey, and we're all on this journey together, and we're fellow travelers. You know, how can I support you? This is how you can support me, and having those kinds of dialogue and those kinds of conversations. As we often say, alone we're limited, and together we can do anything. And so it's about encouraging the skills required to connect with others at a deeper level. These are the 15 EQ competencies of the model that the EQI is based on. So here's a question that's just come in, and the question is, I don't quite get how social responsibility connects with work-life balance, and it's a great question. And yeah, I mean, so social responsibility. So I give back to my community, and that's gonna somehow help me with work-life balance. And really, it's about a deeper understanding of social responsibility, and the fact that that in our society we look at social responsibility as a nice to have, a nice to do, when really, if we look at it in terms of our model, it's a critical to do, it's a critical to have, and it's that piece where others benefit from the expertise that we personally have gained, and in giving it away, we get to keep it. And if we can, again, take that unconditional positive regard for others and see that everybody can benefit from what we have to offer, and we start giving that away, and we start feeling that comes from giving, and we experience the richness that comes with that. And that can be at work, and it can be in the other parts of our lives, and we can feel that sense of fulfillment and enrichment that comes from being socially responsible. And I guess that's the critical piece there. Kim, did you have anything to add to that?
Well, I think it's often when I talk with people about social responsibility, it's interesting. Guilt starts to surface really quickly. I'm not as involved in the community as I'd like to be. And again, often what comes up is I don't have the time. And I think with regard to social responsibility, it's those little moments every day. It's about, if you're in that C-suite, engaging with that frontline worker that you happen to bump into first thing in the morning, and actually making an inquiry about how his or her day is going, and how much meaning that has to that other person who views you as being up at the top of the heap and unapproachable. You've just, engaged in something that has a great meaning for that person. With store clerks, I mean, I'm constantly, I walk into the grocery store and I'm just amazed by those clerks. they've memorized all those codes. I mean, to me, that's fascinating. I would be stumbling around back there, punching the wrong keys, constantly having to phone for the manager to come over to check me out. But you know, it's about recognizing that and having a real human interaction in the moment, and recognizing that we are all on the journey and that we are all works in progress.
Yes, unconditional positive regard. It's absolutely a critical piece of social responsibility. Here's an interesting question, and the question is about the role of technology in work-life balance. Has it made it better or worse? And my personal feeling is both. I clearly remember getting my first BlackBerry years ago, one of the early ones. It was kind of big and clunky. I remember describing it as feeling like holding a piece of toast to your face when you're talking on it. But I also remember that I got it just before a family holiday, and it allowed me to stay in connection with key clients and key customers without interfering with the family holiday. So I was able to sort of get up a little bit earlier and check my BlackBerry, respond to clients, and then put it away. And it's that putting it away. It's that, you know, being assertive about when you're going to allow technology to interfere in your life or not. And if I was working for a major corporation and I had a mobile device and it was expected that at 11 o'clock at night I was going to be responding to things, I would have to say, you know, I would hate that, first of all. I don't know if I would do it. Maybe I would do it, you know, to keep my job because I have to. But it's about being assertive about that and knowing where your boundaries are. And yes, I'm going to use technology for the good that it's going to provide and the way it's going to help, but you know, I'm not going to allow it to intrude in various areas of my life. And you know, I'm talking with a guy who refuses to carry a cell phone for this reason. And yes, it's frustrating for those of us who work with him because we can't get him, you know, right then, but it's interesting. We can get them later, and it doesn't seem to be a problem. You want to talk about that, Kim?
Well, I think for me again, I carried a cell phone for years. I started off with a pager and then a cell phone, and I was on call 24 hours a day, and I was never so happy as to give up my cell phone 5 years ago. But I think what concerns me with regard to the technology is what starts to irk me is when people aren't fully present. So I think what Dave has spoken to as well is it's important to be in touch, and it's important to be fully present throughout the day too. So if I'm in a meeting or I'm having lunch with someone or I'm having family dinner, then my device isn't turned on. It's going to be off for that 45 minutes or for that hour.
Yes.
And I'm going to be fully present in that moment.
Yeah.
And then it will go to voicemail or I'll get an email and I know I have to respond. But that person can actually, whoever's on that other end is going to be able to wait for an hour. So it's that mindful engagement in the use of the devices.
And part of this is related to culture. And it's either appropriate in the country culture or organizational culture that you're in, or it's not. And so we adapt and we become flexible to what the culture says to us around the use of technology, and it also partially answers the next question, which is, and thank you very much for your questions, by the way, are there situations when this model does not resonate well for leaders and managers? How might you mitigate this? And the answer is no. The model resonates with everyone worldwide in every culture. And I happen to recognize where the question's coming from. No, this person works in another country in Africa, and yes, I mean cultures are different, and where the difference lies, I guess, is in how are we being emotionally intelligent? Because again, what's emotionally intelligent? I say again because I say this all the time, even if I haven't said it this morning. That what's emotionally intelligent in one culture may not be emotionally intelligent in another culture. And so, you know, what we find is that the model actually resonates well for leaders and managers everywhere, but it's what it means for them and in terms of their behavior and the way, for example, that they are assertive, the way that they are emotionally expressive. Because you can be too emotionally expressive. You can, and people will be affected negatively by that if it's inappropriate. And so I guess the short answer to your question about whether the model does not resonate well for people, I've not met anyone for whom the model does not resonate well for. But then the discussion, the debate is about the culture that they work in, the culture that they have to be effective in, and then what's effective and what's ineffective. Because we talk about wanting leaders to be more human. If the culture is one more of old school, and we're asking them to be a new school leader, that may be a bit too much for some cultures. And so we have to pay attention. We have to do that read of the situation, that reality testing for the situation, and then we have to be mindful of what is an effective way to be and an effective way to connect.
Well, and I think the important part there too, Dave, is always being aware of where the learner is. I think that we can be excited, really excited about emotional intelligence and what benefits there are there, but it can also be viewed as very much a threat by somebody that's been in a leadership position for a certain amount of time and is just used to operating that way. And so there's pressure to change, and that pressure is more of a confining feeling than an opening up. But they're not necessarily always viewing it as an opportunity. So it's about trying to explore that a bit more. And here I am, an older guy with some wrinkles, and I'll end up working with some executives that are in their 50s who I've had conversations.
Well, you mean some young guys?
Yeah, some guys younger than me, and the conversation will start off. Yes, Kim, I know. Well, we're going to review the report. You're going to tell me that I'm not emotionally intelligent. I already recognize that, and then I'll just carry on from here. And really, that's when I hear that, and I've heard that a number of times. There's a question is that true? And it's, well, let's explore that a bit. Let's explore how you're managing your emotions right now. So I think in every training situation, in every coaching situation, it resonates differently for each individual. So let's just try and get clear about where each of those learners are and start the work from there.
I'm noticing that we've got just a couple minutes left, enough time to maybe summarize and maybe close. And for those of you who have joined us late, my name is David Cory, and my colleague here, Mr. Kim Cairns. We work for the Emotional Intelligence Training Company, or EITC for short. We work with a number of wonderful colleagues who provide coaching and training services to organizations worldwide. We work with all kinds of companies. People say, "What kind of companies do you work with?" And I can't think of a type of company that we haven't worked with, from mom and pop, small family businesses, major corporations, multinationals. We've been all over the world. We've a couple places we haven't been to, of course, but we've had the opportunity to use this model in lots of different cultures and talk with people all over the world about this model and how it applies. And people, again, in answer to your wonderful question about whether it doesn't resonate well with anyone, actually, once they understand what it is, that this is a model of foundational skills and competencies which are required for human beings to be effective in the world, then it becomes more like a foundational set of core competencies. And we can understand both high performance and people who struggle with this model. These 15 competencies, very comprehensive model, originally created by Dr. Reuven Bar-On throughout the 80s and 90s, and dramatically updated for 2014 fantastic new reports, which are really helpful and really wonderful to use with our clients, both for assessment and for training and for coaching, and that's what we do. And we'd be happy to talk with you about bringing these services into your organization, or having you come train with us so that you can then take this back and use this in your organization through our certification courses. So that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back next month. I believe it's March 14th, and so join us then. We'll tell you more about the work that we do and how this model applies to various other situations and circumstances. And eventually, we'll tell you all about this really exciting African project that we're working on. So from myself, David Cory,
and Kim Cairns, thanks for joining us, folks.
and we'll see you next time.